Hey everyone, it's Kong again, and here's another episode of Should You Summon. As always, I'm going to be presenting high-level overviews using these 4 criteria to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. How these characters fit into your team, whether they unlock any bonds, what kind of content they get used for, and their future availability. So let's get right into this Destiny banner featuring Ledin, Rachel, and Altemuller, running from June 25th to July 8th. As a Destiny banner, your first SSR is guaranteed to be one of these 3 that you don't already have. After your first SSR pull, this reverts to a normal raid-up banner, so you can start getting off-banner characters. So first let's start off with Ledin. Ledin is the first protagonist of the Langrisser series. Primarily a PvE-focused tank, whose guard skill converts his defense and magic defense into his attack. If he takes a melee attack and meets a hit point check, he'll counterattack twice, which means he does big damage to melee enemies who engage into him. His 3-cost skill improves his basic guard by extending its duration and making it undispellable, and then kidnaps a nearby enemy, teleporting them next to him so he can attack them. Nearby enemies then suffer reduced movement and can't guard. The skill is good for guard and stat conversion uptime, but the main downside is that you can't simply set it up without a target. And it doesn't help Ledin's weaker damage when he himself is the one initiating combat. He's a member of Protagonists, buffed by Matthew, and Legion of Glory, buffed by Ledin, Elwyn, and Grenier. So he does bring his own faction buff that primarily benefits him, increasing damage dealt by 20% when you're under attack. As the tank, his role in the team is basically to make sure that he's the one who's under attack, so... For bonds, he unlocks the attack bonds for Chris, Grenier, and Narm, and for his own bonds he needs Chris for his very important defensive bond, and Elwyn for his less important attack bond. For content, he's not generally considered to be one of the best tank choices for PvP, simply because compared to Jugler and Landius, he's quite a bit easier to counter. His 3C skill helps him out a bit by giving his kit some more disruptive options, such as summoning an enemy out of formation and then preventing movement and guard. I don't think it's quite enough to make him a must in your box unless you're missing the meta choices. The fact that he can get attacked from range with impunity doesn't really help his case right now. On the PvE side, he is on faction for Hugin and Munin in Ancient Beckoning, but not exactly a useful pick there. In Eternal Temple, he's on faction for Scylla, where he's again mostly dead weight, and for Phoenix, where he can actually be pretty useful. He can also helpfully protect Leon in some setups against the Fire and Thunder Dragons. The reason he's considered a good PvE tank is because you have much greater control over how the rudimentary AI will approach him. Set up his guard and plop him in the range of an enemy and prepare to deal big counter damage. You have an easier time keeping him away from AI-controlled range and magic threats as well. His 3C skill will almost certainly come in handy in some challenges and timeless trials where you can benefit from summoning enemies away from their guards and supportive units, and then picking them off with your own units waiting outside the danger zone. For availability, this same banner with Rachel and Altemuller should be coming back in mid-November. So now let's look at Rachel. Rachel is a well-rounded magical specialist with some very helpful secondary healing and debuff removal built into her talent. Her 3-cost skill is a big AoE blast that piles 5 stacks of fixed damage onto enemies, and she also floats, which helps with mobility and positioning. She's a member of Protagonists, buffed by Matthew, and Yles Legends, buffed by Landius and Sigma. Now, for bonds, she unlocks the defensive bond for Lambda, and the attack bond for Landius. For her own bonds, she needs Angelina for her defensive bond, and Landius for her attack bond. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Phoenix in Eternal Temple, and Hugin and Munin, and Nidhogg in Ancient Beckoning. She's a top pick against Nidhogg in particular. As with any versatile magical unit, she'll be helpful against the Ice Dragon as well. In PvP, she does show up in Apex Arena boxes as well, partly because of her versatile arsenal of single target and AoE magical attacks, but also because of her access to Gospel. Gospel helps immunize you against some common and devastating status ailments, and can also buff up any of the units that you didn't manage to deploy a faction buff for. The mere fact that she unlocks Landius' attack bond makes her a must-summon unit for PvP, since he's meta forever and relies heavily on attack. For availability, she's coming back in mid-September on a Destiny banner alongside Lana and Tiaras, and then this same banner with Ledin and Altemuller is coming back in mid-November. Taking Destiny guarantees into account, knocking Rachel off your checklist here gives you a better chance to get Tiaras later if you're still missing her. Finally, let's look at Altemuller. One half of the formerly game-defining Langrisser tandem, Altemuller was a fashionable pick for run-of-the-mill PvE because he's a tanky flyer with self-sustain and a faction buff that lets Leon run all over the map. His talent lets him grow stacks of attack boost and damage reduction, and his unique Secret Realm helmet increases the duration of self-buffs, including breeze procs. His 3-cost skill, expected on global servers in September, gives him an additional attack without moving again if he's in the midst of multiple enemies when he launches his original attack. It might have some big brain applications, but it doesn't look like it's going to dramatically change his current PvP standing. He's a member of Strategic Masters, buffed by Altemuller and Lanford, Dark Reincarnation, buffed by Bozel and Licorice, and Empire's Honor, buffed by Bernhardt, Leon, and Lance. So he does carry his own faction buff for Strategic Masters. This fusion power allows you to treat all passable terrain as plains when moving, which is what lets Leon soar majestically over forests and rivers alike, and grants you plus 15% damage when attacking from terrain that has a defensive bonus. For bonds, he unlocks the attack bonds for Anna, Emmerich, Sigma, and Varna, and he only needs Anna and Emmerich for his own bonds. For content, in PvE, in Eternal Temple he's on faction for Leviar, Phoenix, and Valkyrie, but he's only really useful against the latter too. In Ancient Beckoning he's on faction for Fenrir and Sleipnir, being particularly useful against Sleipnir because of his ability to stack up tons of damage reduction. He can also be useful against the Dark Dragon and even the Thunder Dragon in his Lancer form if you don't have any better options. Of course, as I've already mentioned, he can also be used in story mode and joint battles as Leon's bulky wingman. His use in PvP has dropped off a bit since the early seasons of Apex Arena, but I will say one thing that he can be useful for depending on how your team has been set up. AI Arena, on the damn desert map. If you don't have a meta AoE rushdown team built for AI Arena, and you're still dependent on someone like Leon to get into the mix, then you can drop Altemuller into your lineup with his faction buff. The fact that this is a highlight says something, I guess. For availability, as I mentioned before, this same banner with Ledin and Rachel should be coming back in mid-November. So here's the quick and dirty. Ledin is a PvP-focused tank, he's a faction buffer for Legion of Glory, and he unlocks attack bonds for Chris, Grenier, and Narm. Rachel is a versatile single-target and AoE magical attacker with secondary healing. She has access to Gospel, and she unlocks the defensive bond for Lambda and the all-important attack bond for Landius. And finally, Altemuller is a durable flyer and Leon amplifier. He's a faction buffer for Strategic Masters, and he unlocks attack bonds for Anna, Emmerich, Sigma, and Varna. Now, just a note about upcoming banners. Next week, this banner will overlap with the launch of the new characters Ilucia and Shilinka. If you're hoping to summon one or both of them, you do have the option of waiting to see how that banner treats you before you try your luck on this one. When this banner goes away, we're expecting it to be replaced by the special Valentine's trade-in event banners that I've been talking about for a while now. This will actually be a slate of 3 banners, one featuring Landius and Angelina, one featuring Sigma and Claret, and one featuring Lanford and the Knight of Mystery. So these banners are unique. Summoning any SSR unit, even an off banner, regardless of whether they're 6-star or not, on any of the 3 banners will give you a trade-in token. If you have 50 shards for any of the featured characters, you can trade them and the token for 60 shards of their banner partner. Since I've had a lot of people ask me in the comments how these banners work, I'll give 2 examples of how they could work in practice. So let's say you don't have Lanford or Mystery Knight. You can summon on their banner, and you have an 80% chance to get one or the other. It doesn't even matter which one you get. If you summon Lanford, you'll get a trade token, and since you didn't have him already, he'll be added directly to your barracks, so no shards yet. But of course these banners are active for 2 weeks, so you can start farming your brand new Lanford's Gate of Fate until you have 50 shards, which you can do in what, 12 or 13 days? Then just go back in and trade those fresh shards and the token from before for a free Mystery Knight. 2 new SSRs for the price of 1. The second example is even easier. Let's say you do already have Lanford, but not the Knight of Mystery. Well, the banner's not coming out for another 2 weeks, so you could farm up 50 Lanford shards in advance. When you summon on the banner, you have a 40% chance to pull your new Knight of Mystery up front. This would allow you to trade those pre-farmed Lanford shards for 60 bonus Knight of Mystery shards if you wanted to. You could just use them on your Lanford. You'll also have a 40% chance of summoning Lanford. Now you can trade your shards for a free Knight of Mystery and still have some to spare. The real perk of pre-farming is that it makes the 20% chance to pull an off banner less dangerous, since you still get a token. So you could use the token that you get from your off-banner summon, combined with the shards that you already have, and still make the trade. Whereas if you didn't pre-farm, you'd have a token sitting there but not the shards ready to trade. So hopefully that clarifies how these banners should work. They're a great way to knock out some characters you're still missing, giving better functional odds than a Destiny banner in some cases. Some people will even be looking to trade simply because getting 10 bonus shards out of the deal saves a couple days of farming. Let me know in the comments who you're summoning for on this banner and what kind of luck you had. Rachel is my guaranteed SSR on this banner, and I've been actively using Landius with pretty good success in PvE and PvP for a long time. So I'm really looking forward to finally taking him to the next level and seeing what he can do with an actual attack stat. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next Should You Summon.